Hey everyone, it is Finn here. Hope you're all doing super well, and in today's video I'll be telling you guys whether I think Manchester City are in trouble of not winning the Premier League this season. So in today's video I'll just be talking about Manchester City in general, along with analysing their first two games of the season. And of course, if you do enjoy regular Premier League content and you are not subscribed, please do consider subscribing to this channel, as I do regular Premier League content. Would love to reach 1,000 subscribers before the end of the year. That is my goal. I would really appreciate it. So can we please reach 900 subscribers before the end of October? I would really appreciate it, and you won't regret it. So I think the first thing I'm going to do in today's video is talk about Manchester City in general. Now, of course, in the 17-18 and the 18-19 Premier League season, Manchester City looked incredible. They looked unstoppable, and people spoke about them as potentially maybe one of the best ever Premier League teams of all time, and potentially a team that could dominate the Premier League for 5 to 10 years. But obviously last season, there was a tiny bit of trouble in paradise as they came second in the Premier League. And now, yes, I know that by itself is not an embarrassing thing or anything to be ashamed of, but it is the fact that Manchester City came second by 18 points to league winners Liverpool, and it was statistically Pep Guardiola's worst ever season in his managerial career. And the big question this Premier League season is, can Manchester City redeem themselves? And looking at their first two games versus Wolves and Leicester City, I'm not too sure about it yet. And yes, I know luck does play its part in football, and it always has been, and Manchester City to an extent have been very unlucky with injuries and players missing out. Obviously, Laporte, their main centre-back, their best centre-back, out with injury last season, and this season he has missed the first two games due to him having the coronavirus. And now at the moment, Aguero and Jesus, their two main strikers, out with injury. But besides the point, they haven't played well in their first two games. Obviously a 5-2 loss to Leicester City, very embarrassing, and discipline-wise they were very poor. And versus Wolves, yes, Manchester City did get a 3-1 win, but I don't think they played that well, and I think there was a lot of luck in that game, and I don't think Manchester City showed us what they can fully potentially do as a team. And the reason I say that there was some elements of luck for Man City in that game, well, you only have to look at the 3 goals that they scored. The first goal that they scored, a penalty, a clear and obvious penalty, obviously. Stupid mistake from the centre-back from Wolves that pretty much gave Kevin De Bruyne that goal. Second goal that Manchester City scored, a really well-worked team goal, which if they play like that throughout the rest of the season, then they can compete for the title. And if they pass like that instead of being selfish versus Leicester City, the result might have gone the other way. But a huge reason to why Foden got that goal for Manchester City versus Wolves is the fact that Rui Patricio left the goal wide open by coming out too far, and I can't promise that will happen in every game. So yes, to an extent lucky, but a very well worked goal from Manchester City. The third goal Manchester City scored was of course a deflection from Gabriel Jesus, and that is why I said that this game was somewhat lucky for Manchester City, because looking at their 3 goals, it was a penalty, a goalkeeping mistake, and a deflection, which yes, you do have to score those goals in football, and those goals do happen in football all the time. You have to capitalize off of your opponent's mistakes. But if Manchester City wants to win the Premier League this season, they have to create and they have to score their own chances, and they can't just rely on mistakes. Now, the reason I say this is because there were some very obvious, very clear chances that Manchester City did not score from in this game. Now, the problem is not the fact that they can't create chances, but it's the fact that they are not clinical enough to score the chances that they do create. Looking at Gabriel Jesus, for example, he is supposed to be Sergio Aguero's successor one day, his replacement. He is supposed to be a Premier League striker, and yet he really messed up this chance. Yes, I get it. Strikers make mistakes every now and then, and they miss their shots. But for Jesus to not even make Rui Patricio dive for the ball and instead kicks it straight at the goalkeeper, if he wants to be City's main striker in a year or two, he needs to do better than that. But this game as a whole, the main problem for City was not their attack, it was their defense, and the fact that they didn't put enough pressure on the opposition's attack. For example, I've seen this on 3 different occasions, the first one being the Wolves goal that was scored. Once Podence got Kevin De Bruyne past that nutmeg, I mean, look, that happens all the time. I'm not fussed about that. He had way too much space to work with, and the Manchester City's defense actually moved back, allowing him to have more space, including Benjamin Mendy, who should have closed in on space so that Podence didn't have too much space to work with. But no, instead Podence got that cross in because he had all the space in the world, and Jimenez scored that header. And I think this game has proven to me and a lot of other fans that Mendy is not Manchester City worthy. Another example of poor defense from City is, as you can see in the screenshot right here, this very clear path between two Wolves players to make a pass. There are enough Man City defenders there to defend the ball, and they don't even put enough pressure on the Wolves attack. That is City's problem. They don't put pressure on opposition's attack. They move in two lines of defense, allowing the opposition to pass through them. The third example I have of Man City having horrible defense is looking here. Man City's defensive line is way too high, meaning when a fast player gets through them, he is gone and clear. Now, luckily for City, Podence didn't get this chip in, but it is just another example that Edison comes way too far off his line. He did it a lot last season, he's doing it again this season, and it will cost City many goals. The second game that Man City have played, the big loss, 5-2 loss to Leicester City. It was not a good day for Manchester City at all. But looking at the starting lineups, you have to remember the fact that they had no main strikers at Manchester City. Both Aguero and Jesus out with injury. Therefore, they had to result in putting Raheem Sterling in that striker position, which I think really did cost them, because Raheem Sterling can be a very good player, but not as a striker. I found him way too selfish in that game. But Manchester City as a whole, I found since Riyad Mahrez scored in the 4th minute of the game, they were way too lazy and laid back. They were a bit cocky, if I can say so. But as I said, Raheem Sterling was way too selfish as a striker and does not work in that position at all. For example, as you can see on the screenshot, it is literally just him and Schmeichel, and yet instead of going either side of the goalkeeper to score, he decides to shoot straight at him. That's not necessarily him being selfish, it's just not him being very clever in the game. But an example of him being selfish is this chance right here. He is never going to score from this position, yet he decides to shoot instead of dragging the ball back and crossing to the two teammates he has in this box. I don't think Raheem Sterling had a very good game overall, and I do think the fact that they had to play him in that striker position really did disable Man City a tiny bit. But at the end of the day, Manchester City were just never going to win this game with their poor defensive discipline. They gave away 3 penalties. Look, if Manchester United won 3 penalties, we would never hear the end of it. But the fact that Leicester did it, it's all good. But looking at Man City's defensive discipline, they were so poor. The first penalty they gave away, Kyle Walker standing on the wrong side of the attacker and therefore took out Jamie Vardy to stop him from scoring. It was very poor defensive discipline, and especially for someone with that much experience like Kyle Walker, you never expect that mistake. And it makes me a bit suspect of whether Kyle Walker deserves to be at Man City. He was once one of the best right backs in the world, and he's not even the best English right back in the world anymore. Another huge defensive problem for them was Garcia. I do think Garcia has potential to be a great centre-back in the future, but at the moment I don't think he is what Manchester City need, which luckily apparently Man City have signed Ruben Dias, and let's hope this is a real deal for them, not like Lionel Messi. But defensively, I don't think Garcia had that good a game. Yes, he had some great moments, some great tackles, but at the end of the day, he is just too inexperienced to play against a team like Leicester City, which, yes, I do understand. They were strapped for choices due to injuries, but Garcia stood on the wrong side of Vardy for this goal. And when it came to the penalty that he gave away, I do think it's because he wasn't spatially aware of what was happening around him. And as I said, I do think that was a huge downfall for Manchester City as a whole in general. He wasn't aware of where the player was around him, and therefore that allowed Vardy to cut past him. The third mistake that Garcia alone made was the fact that he allowed way too much space for Maddison to get into a position to shoot and score that goal. At the end of the day, I do think defense is what Man City's main problem is, and they do need to sort it out. Now that I've analyzed both games, it is time for me to answer that crucial question of, do I think Man City are at risk of not winning the title this season? And unfortunately, I do think they are going to struggle this season. Whether they'll win it or not, I'm not too sure. Obviously, that's an opinion-based thing, but I do think they'll struggle this season. And unfortunately, a lot of it does come down to the fact that I don't think they have a lot of luck with injuries. I think once Laporte is back in the team, if Man City get a new centre-back, That defensively will help them out a lot, and once Aguero and Jesus are back in their attacking positions. But other than that, Manchester City, they need to press more in their defense, they need to allow less chances for the opposition, and then they will be fully sorted. But guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Once again, sorry if it is a tiny bit all over the place. I was trying something new, but I hope you still ended up enjoying it. If there are any other videos you want me to make, please put them in the comment section down below. But guys, otherwise, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you are not subscribed and you like Premier League content, please do consider subscribing. But otherwise, this has been Finn, FYNN. I love and appreciate every single one of you. Stay awesome. Cheers.